Don't look for a studio to fulfill your creative desires or itch.
All right, so today I have Shaun Keenan with me today. He is a production / concept artist for Nintendo software technology. And he agreed to be interviewed today, kind of ask him how he got to where he was and some tips and advice on how you can get into the entertainment industry as an artist. So really quick before we start, I just wanted to let you know how I came across you.
Okay.
A buddy of mine and I were looking at making a comic book, and we had this idea for like a dinosaur cowboy thing. And so we were like messing around, and we'd done some stuff, and he was like, "Hey, maybe you should check and see if this is like already a thing. Like maybe somebody already like has done this, and we're just going to be copying them." And so I looked it up, and sure enough, you had like 10 or more cowboy dinosaurs. And I saw one of the comments someone posted, and they were like, "Dude, you should totally make this a comic book." And I was like, "Well, that's deep." So it's still possibly in production. We'll see.
Yeah, man. Yeah. No. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have some really awesome work. Especially, I like how you do a lot of series. Of either you had like your fighting creatures or your dino riders and stuff like that.
Yep.
But before we get into all that, kind of I guess like what's your story? How what made you decide to be an artist, and what was kind of like your beginnings?
Yeah. Well, quickly, I've been drawing since I was a little kid, and that's what a lot of these artists say, but it's true for me. Ever since I was 5 or so, I've been drawing. I would draw on my homework, in elementary school, my math tests and stuff. I'd always be doodling animals and creatures and dinosaurs. And early on, I grew up on Disney movies and Disney cartoons, Warner Brothers. So for the longest time, I thought I wanted to be like a traditional 2D animator. And so as a kid, that's what I thought I'd want to be. And as I just grew up and went through high school, I just kept drawing on my own, and took some art classes in high school, but nothing too serious. And then I just kind of, when I graduated high school, I really wasn't motivated, and I just kind of floated around a little bit. I detailed cars for 7 years and just drew on the side for fun, and nothing really too crazy. But I already had a passion for it. I played a lot of video games, and I love being creative. And shortly after I got married, I discovered Photoshop. And I had Photoshop Elements, which was like this little starter kit for Photoshop, which it didn't have all the tools, but it had just enough to get started. And it came with this little tiny Wacom tablet, which is really small. And I was like,
so like, when was this? We're talking like,
this is maybe 2005.
Okay.
Yeah. So a little over 10 years ago.
Okay.
And I was like, holy crap, this is how they color things. Cause I really wasn't really privy to digital art. I would see digital paintings, and I not really understand how it was done. I was just kind of in my own little bubble. And so I would just mess around in Photoshop Elements and use the dodge and burn tool way too much, and just soft brush it. And my first digital paintings were awful.
And were you using a mouse, or you said you had like a little?
I had a little tablet with a stylus. Yeah. Okay. But I was like hooked, man. I'm like, man, this is amazing. Like, it was like a whole new world. And then a little after that, my wife was like, you're not happy detailing cars, and she would call it a raw talent. I had this raw ability, but I was unrefined, And she's like, you should go to art school. And I really didn't have, I don't know, self-confidence. I don't know. I just was really shy about showing my work. I'm like, I don't know. And she's like, I'm going to push you. You just go to the Art Institute. So we looked, and the closest Art Institute was up in Portland. I'm in Seattle now, in the Seattle area, but I was in Oregon for a long time, and went to the Portland Art Institute, and not really knowing what I was getting myself into, but knowing that I wanted to pursue a creative career. Took out that big student loan, and I went to Art Institute. And so what's interesting was when I went to the Art Institute in 2006. I was really enamored with like 3D modeling and 3D animation. And I was like, oh man, I think it looks awesome. I want to get into that. So for the first maybe like 2 years, I tried to learn all that stuff, Maya, and learn texturing, learn 3D modeling, some animation. But I was just not feeling it. It was just, it didn't have the pull. I kept being drawn back to wanting to draw and to just, because I would struggle with 3D modeling. And I'm like, dude, it's just easier just to draw something instead of just fiddle with this crazy interface. And it just didn't mesh well. And I would see my other students, or not other friends in class, the other students, like zip past me in 3D modeling because they just had this like passion for it that I didn't have. And so this is where like everything just changed for me. I met, his name's Lee White, and I consider him my mentor.
Say it one more time.
His name's Lee White.
Lee White. Okay, cool.
Lee White. He's a children's book illustrator, and he was teaching a lot of illustration classes, a lot of sketch classes at Art Institute. I took his first class, which was called Quick Sketch. And up to that point, a lot of drawing classes were very draw this still life and this, and it's just kind of boring and dry. Draw on these big pieces of paper with charcoal, and there's you can learn from that, but that's not what it was just dry. But Lee, he was teaching how to be a visual development artist, and it was for the first time I just kind of woke up and was like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is what I want to learn, because he was talking about layout and character design, things specific for storytelling and things like that. And I was like, this is it. Like, he rescued my school career, because at that point I was really just like kind of disenfranchised with the whole thing. And so at that point at the Art Institute in Portland, there really wasn't a concept art trajectory like as a major. It was just kind of this offshoot thing, because for the it just was a very remarkable thing to send students into the concept art field. It wasn't, there's a lot of need for modelers and texture artists and animators. Concept art, it's much more fringe and small. Mm-hmm. And so they're like, well, you can kind of do what you want. So Lee, pretty much, we kind of made my own little curriculum. I did a lot of, what do you call it? It was just, I would create my own class. I can't remember the name they call it, like open study, or just a class where him and I would meet a couple times a week, and we'd agree to like, okay, what are we going to focus on this semester? And it'd be accredited, and I'd do like environment design. So I'd do all these environment things. And so for the next 2 years, I just learned from Lee White and took all the other kind of concept art classes that he had there. We would have classes that would be pre-production classes. So it would be a mock setup of a studio. So we'd have a game idea, and he would be the acting art director, and then he would assign roles to the students. So there'd be a character lead, an environment lead, and we'd work that way. And that's when it was like the hooks got into me. I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is fun.
Right.
And so I graduated putting all my eggs in one basket. I'm like, I want to be this concept artist. I know it's even the career advisor guy. He's like, well, this is going to be difficult.
While you were doing these things, like when you left car detailing to become an artist, and how old were you when you left to go to?
I was 26. So yeah.
Were there anybody, like friends or family or people who are just like, this is a dumb idea, or even teachers who are like, oh, going straight into concept art, like it's really saturated. There's not a massive demand, for the people that were telling you like this is.
Yeah. My family was pretty supportive. My wife was very supportive. My parents and my friends and siblings, my sister was supportive. But there was one teacher in particular. Bless his heart, I loved him, but he was very jaded, and he was like my senior year. I'll never forget him. He's like, come over here. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, come here, look at this work over here. And he showed me some artist portfolio of this amazing environment art. And he's like, look at this. What do you think about this? I'm like, oh, it's gorgeous. It's amazing. He's like, yeah, he worked for Disney, worked for this. I'm like, oh, that's sweet. He's like, yeah, he can't find work. I'm like, oh, he was like, yeah, it's it's pretty bleak right now. And this is like, 6 months before I'm going to graduate. And
Right.
he was very just blunt. And to Lee's credit too, Lee had some very realistic, he would say things like that too. He wasn't so blunt. He could be blunt, but he was very like in an educated way. It's like, look, guys, it's a tough field, man. And it's very competitive, and you have to be good. And there's some luck involved too. But if you're good, you'll find work. If you're really good, you'll find work. But at that point, you would see a divide in the classroom where there was like kind of a band of us, me, my friend Tyler, a guy named Andy, and there was a couple other of us, a guy named Isaiah Sherman. We were all really taken it seriously, and we were competitive with each other. And then everyone else kind of, you could just see they weren't taking us seriously, or they were going to struggle if they went that route. And it was just kind of like a wake up call. Like, if you really want to do this, then you have to, like, because you're going up against guys who've been doing this already for years, and now you're going to be direct competition with these guys who have much more years of experience. So yeah, then I graduated in 2009, and I got my first job like right after that. It was a contract job with Liquid Development. I got to do. I just got to design 2 stadium environments and props for a game called Blood Bowl. So it's like a tabletop football game with using like orcs and elves, and but it's a video game version. It was for the expansion, and I designed 2 stadiums for that. Right. They already had the existing idea; they just needed it fleshed out, and that was like a really fun project. It lasted for 3 months, and then for the next couple of years after that, I would do a lot of contract work for a lot of studios in Portland, commercial stuff. Indie games, but they're all like in little stints. Some would be a couple months, some would be for a couple weeks. Right. Most of it was from home. Some of it I would go to a studio in-house for a couple months, and they're like, hey, project's done, you're done, thanks, man. And I made really good relations with these guys, but it's very sporadic. 2011, I didn't work at all. I just could not find work. My wife, she had a full-time job at the time, and she really helped buffer those times of not having anything. Otherwise, I would have, I don't know, I'd had to like work at Safeway or something. I don't know.
So when you were getting ready to go out into the workforce, or even just in school, how did you ever have like feelings of like inadequacy? Like, holy cow, like the people I'm going at, like looking at other people's art and thinking, these people are amazing. There's no way I can compete with them. Did you ever feel like that? And if you did, like, how did you deal with that? Like, how did you overcome it to get to the point where you are today? Yeah.
Of course I did feel that way. And it was a motivational thing. And I use it as inspiration, really. Like, I remember Lee would have us create our like fantasy portfolios. So he would have us take art or artist work that we would love if it was our own work. Make this perfect portfolio out of artists that you want to use, and use that as a motivation to step up your level, and use that to, man, I want to get to the level I can get to that level. So I remember using stuff from Bobby Chu for his like creature design and his digital painting, and Armand Serrano, who is an amazing environment artist. He's at Disney now, and these guys, I just like look at their work, and at the same time, I was starting to develop my own kind of style, but taking little bits of influences from these other artists I've been looking at. And so I would use them as just like a competitive edge. I'm like, man, can I get that good? I don't know, but I'm going to try.
Right.
And I don't know. I still feel, they call it the imposter syndrome. Yeah. And I definitely have that as well.
Like people are just one day going to be like, wait a second, you're not a real artist. And you're
you
like,
don't,
oh.
Exactly. I'm like, dude, I'm pulled the wool over you guys. I've been fooling you for too long. You're going to find me out. And because there's days, man, because I draw every day, whether it's at work or for my personal stuff, but you sometimes just don't have it. Like, and it's kind of the equivalent of like a writer's block. You're just not inspired by anything, and it's right. And other days it's just going, man. It's a weird thing.
So when you have those days, because I have those days too sometimes, and I find that like everything I'm drawing, I'm just like, man, this is total crap. Like none of this is worth keeping. But for me, I find you just have to you just have to push through it. Even if everything you're doing that day is bad, doesn't matter. Draw it anyways and get it out of your system. Because on the days when I don't do that, where I'm like, everything's bad, I'm just going to take a break. It's like you have to get so many bad drawings out of your systems before you can get back to the good ones. And if you just put it off, then like the next day, they're still bad. And then like the next day, and the next day. And so like, I don't know if that's how it is for you, but for me.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, it's totally true. I can't remember the name of the guy's, the author's name, but there's a book called The War of Art. I've been listening to it off and on. It's you can audiobook on Amazon or on this audiobook, or you can get the real book. But he's a writer, and the thing that stuck out to me the most when I was like listening to it, he was talking about how he would just sit down every day and do the work, whether it was crap or not. Just sitting down and doing the work and getting out of your system, whether it's bad or good. It's just you're working things out, you know.
Right.
And with that comes just a confidence as you're eventually gonna work out whatever kinks you might have that day. But don't, there's times where you're like, I'm not gonna draw all day, I'm kind of burned out. But at the same time, just being consistent on a weekly basis, just drawing and working those things out. Because you're gonna have those days where it's like, man, I can't draw.
Right. So in your art, are there any artists that you'd say like influence your art style that as you're learning to digital paint and draw that you really like latched onto, and you even today still you feel like influence the way you paint and draw?
Yeah. It's amazing how we kind of change our sense of what we appreciate aesthetically. Like when I first started, I thought I really liked like uber detail and tight rendering, and I still appreciate tight rendering, but I'm more now very much. I really like things that are more loose and more indicated. Even when you look at them, like Laurel Austin, she's an artist at Blizzard, and she does these really gorgeous paintings. When you look at her paintings, they're still pretty. They're kind of loose still, They're not completely tight, and you can still see strokes of the hand. And in terms of design, though, like Jake Parker's an amazing designer with his creatures and characters and robots. Once I discovered him, his stuff was really, really was inspiring. Armand Serrano, again, I mentioned him. Armand Serrano for environments and prop design. His stuff has always been. Another guy, Marcelo Vignali. Right. He's awesome. And a lot of these guys I discovered a few years ago. Just once I started Instagram, because it's like I started to find all these other artists, and so that's when my what I appreciated more started to change a little bit, and because the way I draw, like I get tired of stuff quick, because after I'm drawing something and I like it, I want to move on to something else. I don't want to sit there and noodle it forever and like render it for a week.
Yeah, I see on Instagram when I found you, you had like 9,000 followers, and that was like a few months ago, and now you have 17,000. So you're doing awesome. You like doubled it in like a couple months. So that's
man, it's incredible. And how just like Instagram changed how I work, man. Like it's such an outlet, and it's so fun, and it gives me a reason to keep drawing, because we draw because we want to show our stuff, Right. And it's really cool when people start to respond to your work, you want to keep drawing. Yeah. And then you see other people's work and you're like, oh man, that guy's stuff's rad. I don't even have to draw rad stuff too. And I started Instagram like a couple years ago. My brother-in-law, Andy Barry, he's an awesome artist too. And he was like, dude, you want Instagram? I'm like, I don't know, man. I just kind of had this stigma of Instagram being like this kind of lame social media thing.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, well, dude, legit artists are using this. That's cool. And ever since, man, I've changed kind of the way, like the series I do. Like I've always loved doing a collection of work that's like this complete body. And it's fun to kind of market test certain things.
Right.
I'll draw something and people are like, oh, this is cool. I'm like, okay, that's another series, I guess. And
yeah, that I find that too. Sometimes I'll just do something like a little doodle. I'm like, I don't know if I really like this. And everyone's like, that's amazing. And I'm like, really? And then I do something that I'm like, oh, people are going to love this. And I put it out and nobody likes it. And I'm like, Like when Pokemon Go was huge, I started doing those like Pokemon fusion things, and I was like, these are going to be huge. And they got the least amount of likes out of anything I had ever done. And I was like, what the heck? Like, what is going on? So yeah, it's super valuable tool in this.
It is.
Like,
it is.
Really easily market test what people want.
Yeah. But, and I apologize if I start to rabbit trail a little bit. I start to overthink things, but to go back to your question of the styles and influence of style, just that loose style. I really appreciate a good design more than a pretty painting. I can appreciate pretty, but when I see like a beautifully designed creature or a vehicle or an environment and the shapes and the way it's laid out or the proportions are really fun, I am drawn to that more than like a pretty
rendering.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's stuff that I like to do. So the furthest I'll ever take a painting is like to paint on what's in there. And if you notice, a lot of paintings is just like either like a creature, an animal or something and like a minimal background. But once I hit like the 4-hour mark, I'm like, okay, dude, I'm done.
Right.
So I'm going to do something else.
So is that like the most you spend on a painting then is like 4 hours usually?
4 to 6 hours. And maybe I'll like spend a couple hours one evening and then take a break and then like finish it the next day but yeah, earlier on I would spend more time on paintings. But I learned to get fast. There's this one gig I had to do like 2 paintings a day, like these scenes. It was almost like painted comic book panels. And there's a couple of images from it, like early in my feed on Instagram. One of them is like this. It's like this girl with like kind of a rice hat, and there's like a sunset behind her. And it was this project that just had this crazy turnaround. And I had no choice but to be really loose. And it kind of got me more proficient and just fast and just hitting what needs to be hit and then like not overthink. I didn't have time to overthink the painting. So I just had to move on.
Right.
And now with my personal work, I'm like, okay, that's good. You know, I don't need to paint out every single bit of line work. I like to see a little bit of line work. Right. The idea is getting across without rendering the thing. So It's good.
What are some, I guess, like pitfalls or, I don't know, things that you see in like new artists or young artists that either just like drives you crazy or you think is like, you know, I don't know, like for example, I see a lot of like, I go teach workshops at high schools and stuff, and kids will bring their work up to me afterwards and show me their portfolio, and they'll be like, I want to work doing concept art for this place, or I want to do game art. And then like their work is like a bunch of anime stuff. And I'm like, well, make work that looks like the place you're going to, where you want to work. If you want to work at an anime place, then make anime. But if you want to work at Pixar, they're not going to hire you if everything in your portfolio is anime, you know? Yeah. So that like drives me crazy when they like show me that. And I'm like, well, why would you think they would hire you if this is what you're showing them?
Yeah, that's one. That's a big one. And I think another one is having maybe too much. You can tell they were assignments. Like if it was like a college assignment stuff. So like if it's like a material study for like a block, and it's like, here's one of my material studies. It's like a block that's one's cement and one's wood, and that's cool, but it's not really interesting to look at. Mm-hmm. And so giving yourself your own projects that will highlight what you'd like to do, instead of having like this kind of scattered, kind of boring kind of assignments that aren't very interesting to look at, especially like I've heard like if you have like figure drawings, like nothing but figure drawings, that's cool, I guess, but they're not very interesting. Maybe have one page of like some loose figure work to show that you have the anatomy down, and then do some, have fun stuff. Because that's the thing, like, dude, your work has to stand out amongst now a sea of really talented art. It's crazy. And sometimes I have to even like stop looking at Instagram sometimes, because I get discouraged. I'm like, dude, there's so many good artists. Like, what the heck? Like, it's ridiculous. And so having stuff that really stands out, that we all borrow styles from other artists, and that's fine, but finding your unique voice, I think, is really important.
Right.
Like it's really cool to have one thing that people can identify you to.
Right.
Oh, that's the bird guy, or that's the guy who does dinosaurs, or that's the guy who does amazing castles. Like if it's really, that helps. I mean, be well-rounded, but also have that one thing. Like I can't remember where I heard this from, but I think back when there was a lot of practical effects were really huge in Hollywood, there was like one guy who was like the guy you went to do like model ships and submarines, and it was very specialized, right? Like he had a handle on that market of model submarines. Right. You're gonna live and die by that. But man, he was the best in the biz, and you would go to him for that. And like I think there's something cool with that. Like you're just this one thing that you're known for helps you stand out too.
Right. For a long time, I was like trying really hard to like get a style, and I heard Bobby Chiu and Jake Parker, who you mentioned earlier, they both talked about how like you should stop trying to like figure out your style and just like make stuff that you like, and then over time your style will naturally emerge. And since I did that, my art has been completely inconsistent. Like I'll have some like really loose stuff that looks like it, like almost like paper cut, like construction paper that's digital, and then other stuff that's like super photorealistically rendered with like atmospheric effects and like light dust particles and stuff, and they're like completely different ends of the spectrum. But I've like grown artistically a ton, and stuff that I've learned in like a really simple style has still been applicable to something more rendered, and vice versa. So I think like we do get influenced a lot by the people around us, but that really just making stuff that you like to make, your style will emerge.
It will. And I think if you try too much to think of a style, like you want to, you strong arm it, and you can stiffen up. Because I mean, I think I have a couple of styles, like, because I sometimes I really like line work to show in my work, and sometimes I like to paint it all out. And I guess you could maybe tell they're both for me, but I don't know. I've never really thought about, okay, this isn't in my style. But like you said, doing what you like. I like things that have pushed proportions a little bit, and things that have fun shapes, and they're fun in the design. So that's the stuff I'm gonna draw, and it just kind of organically emerges. Right. And so I think you're right on with that. Just draw what you like, and it'll come.
So, just like two last questions. If you could like go back in time 10 years ago and tell like the younger version of you something that you know now that would have like helped you or benefited you, what would it be?
So basically I've been learning this in the last couple of years, actually. It's don't look for a studio to fulfill your creative desires or itch, because for a while I had this idea in my mind that, man, if I just got this one studio and it's going to just that's going to be it, man, it's going to fulfill me creatively. Because a lot of times, like I'd say 70% of the time, as soon as you're going to be working, you're going to work on stuff that you don't necessarily would ever draw on your own, or things that you necessarily like, but you're doing it to get the experience of a studio and to just get that experience in the industry. And if you use that to be like your creative outlet, you're gonna just like, it's gonna just totally feel like work. And it's gonna, because it is work at the end of the day. When you're doing a long time, it's work. And it helps if you're having fun with it, which I do have fun with it, but I'm not looking for it to, fulfill that creative need to have. And that's why I'm doing all this side stuff for fun, and Instagram is that outlet for me. I'll do a series, I'll do whatever I feel like drawing, and I have no art director telling me how to change it or whatever. I'm my own art director. I'm going to do whatever I want. And it's that split. So having it in the back of my mind going into it, looking for work, okay, I'll be honored to work in any studio that gives me a chance, and I'm going to do my best, but I'm not going to kind of try to look for it to fulfill like this deep creative yearning.
Right. Right.
You know, that's so set something aside, do your own thing on the side. If you're a full-time artist, a lot of full-time artists do have things on the side, but some of them, you know, I know they don't. Like they draw when they're at work, and then they don't even think about it when they're done, you know, in their off time, which is cool too. But for me, I still love to draw, and that's the struggle too, is after a day at work, you're at like 30%, 40% capacity.
Right.
So you have that desire to draw, but your brain's kind of goo or whatever, and you get creative how to bring these drawings out. So it's exercise in discipline too. Mm-hmm. You know, because I'm working full time, and I'll do these drawings on the weekend, or I do a lot of drawing on my lunch break. I'm like, okay, I have an hour. What can I draw for fun? Right. Like while I'm at Nintendo, you know. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, working at Nintendo is really fun, but it's work too, and I try to separate it. And so that's why I tell myself, man, just don't put these studios on such a high pedestal that's going to fulfill all your deepest desires.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then, so my final question is, seeing where you are today and what you're doing, how, for other people who want to get to the point that you're at, how necessary is it for them to go to like an art school? Because you went to the Art Institute, which is pretty expensive. And you had mentioned how some of it was kind of like you felt like you were wasting your time almost, you know. But at the other hand, you met a really great mentor that really helped you, you know, push your career, and they were able to kind of like customize your curriculum. With today's, you know, internet and access to all these resources, how necessary is it for someone to get into your position now to go to college?
Yeah, I really don't think it's as necessary now, for sure. Because if you're good, man, you're going to get work. And the one thing though that I really did like about going to this Art Institute was the classroom setting, working with other guys who we're all learning together, and just that face-to-face relationship. When you're learning on your own from an online course, those are great, but nothing can really truly replace that one-on-one. So even if you can substitute that with having like a group of friends that you're challenging each other. I don't know, there's just something about drawing next to your buds or guys who are challenging you, and you look over and they're drawing, you're like, oh, that's really good, man. I got to step up my game. Like, because when you're all by yourself in like, you're almost like in a vacuum, you can take the curriculum and you can do these online courses and stuff, but you have to be really disciplined to like push yourself beyond these walls that you'll hit because you're just by yourself. Right. But if you have X amount of guys around you that, you know, are equal your level or might be better, that's going to just naturally push you. Right. So, but to answer your question, I don't think, you know, the big expensive schools are necessary. You know, you look at a lot of jobs, they do ask for degrees of some kind. But a lot of times they use that to kind of weed out just any Joe Blow who's going to try to get in it. But
those people with the anime.
The anime and the furries and stuff. Yeah. But yeah. And so, but there's some awesome online courses now, you know, and I've used some of them to just sharpen my skills, you know, and I'm still very much in the attitude of learning, you know. I by no means have felt that I've achieved or anything. I'm constantly challenged and humbled by artists everywhere, and I'm very blessed to, you know, be where I'm at now. And but it took a while to get here. It's funny, dude. Like my Lee White, my mentor, he almost is like, it was almost prophetic. He goes, "Give yourself about 5 years before you start making any money in the industry." Because he's a children's book illustrator, and for children's book illustrators, it's even a longer period of time before you start making any money if you're really serious about it. So there's like this incubation time where you just go through it, man. You just go through, yep, you know, rejection and times of famine, times of feast, mostly famine. But you know, everyone's story is different. I'm kind of an exception to the rules in some regards because, first of all, they say like networking is really important, and it is. Like I've gotten 80% of my jobs through networking, but the two studio in-house full-time studio salaried positions that I've ever gotten. Well, I'm not salaried at Nintendo yet, but I've been full-time for 2 years. So I'm still contract. But the 2 salaried studio positions I had, I just applied online blindly, not knowing a soul. And my work somehow stood out to the guys hiring, and that's what helped. But you'll hear a lot of guys say, don't just blindly apply to studios. And that's true, because your stuff will just get lost in the piles.
Unless you're like, you have to be really good, which you are really good. But for someone like fresh out of college, for example, or just barely breaking in, it's going to be really hard. Not because your work is terrible. I mean, honestly, it probably is terrible. In a year from then, if you don't look back and look at your work and think, oh, that's terrible, then you probably haven't gotten any better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. I used to have this mindset that like networking was kind of like dirty almost, like people to get where you want to be, you know? And
sure.
I'm going to have the best art ever, so it doesn't matter where I am. But there's nothing wrong with like, people want to work with people they like, you know?
Exactly.
And having good work and a good network, I feel like, from my experience anyways, are both super important. You can't really be as successful as you could possibly be without both of them.
Oh, exactly, man. Yeah, you get that double whammy. And there's instances where sometimes a studio they'd rather hire someone whose work is passable, but they're just a fantastic person to work with, rather than work with the person who's really difficult but has amazing work. Because you're going to be with that person every day. You're on a team, and you're bouncing ideas off each other. And I've worked on some amazing teams. Like when you get work on a team of artists who are like really gelling, it's really cool. Like it's because I've worked a lot from home, just in the solitude of my little home studio, and that's cool. But at the same time, it's tough. But there's just something about working with a good team, and when you want to bring somebody on, you want someone that's really good to work, fun to work with.
So then I guess, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like one of the most important parts for you from going to school was kind of like the creative environment. And that definitely really helped you. So for anyone who doesn't want to have to go to school and they want to learn on their own, would you say that's kind of like one of the biggest things you think that would help them? Or
it would help them, but I don't know if it's worth giant student loan.
Right.
It's just one of those intangibles that is really, it's nice to have.
Right.
And if you happen to have a network of friends or buddies or whatever who share your interest in, create a draw club or something that you're getting together drawing and challenging each other, that just helps. It helps enhance your learning experience.
Right.
Instead of just learning in a vacuum, it's just one of those things. But now it's crazy now, because I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants at the Art Institute, If it wasn't for Lee White, I don't know really what. Serious, man. He helped shaped the way I think about, a lot of things artistically, and his style is a lot different than mine, but some of the way he treats color and values and stuff, you'll see that still in my work, even though we have completely different styles. But yeah, I always credit him for like just rescuing my school career. And so I was blessed in that way, just like he was there to rescue.
Awesome.
Because it was not fun for a while.
Cool. Well, hey, thanks, man, for doing this interview. It was great. It was really cool to get to know you.
Yeah, man.
Really appreciate it. And I'll go ahead and post a link to your website and your blog and Instagram and stuff in the description so people can go and check you out. Hey, guys. Hope you enjoyed that. If you like what you saw today and you want to see more artist interviews, then make sure you subscribe. I'll also be doing paintovers, critiques, and some artist tips and tricks to help you get better and level up in your art. So yeah, be sure to subscribe. I'll post a link to Shaun's art, his website, his blog, his Instagram in the description. And I hope you guys enjoyed it and that you have a great day. See ya.